Okay, I want to talk about argument, because you see people in their echo chambers online and they sort of argue in terms of what people in the echo chamber would like, argumentation wise. But if you're going to change other people outside of the echo chamber, instead of just circle jerking about stuff, you need to think in terms of the opponent and then undermine that worldview based on how the opponent thinks. You either need to directly attack the thing that they think. Well, first of all, you're never going to change anybody's mind because people are idiots. But if you had someone where you could change their mind, you would do it by attacking the thing directly, or because they're going to move around on what their definitions are, you can instead find a related topic that is generally part of their worldview and attack that. And then that forces them to reveal the actual content of the thing that's under discussion, their actual definitions. And then once you draw the disjunction between those two things, those two views that they hold, then you might corner them a little bit. I just want to add that I'm a poor arguer in person. I'm very good at, maybe arguing things on paper, I guess, or laying out the options, basically. But people who are sort of perceptive, like I'm a perceiving type, people who are perceptive struggle with being willing to just win an argument outright, because they're very fair. They're very like, I'm going to figure out what's true. I'm not going to think about what is self-serving for me. So that's very different from the person who just tries to use charisma to win the present argument they're in, rather than be like kind of holistically ethical or truthful or whatever. Okay. The example I had in mind, based on all of what I've said so far, is the abortion debate. So you take someone, let's say they're kind of a Christian, and they say life is life, you can't kill a life, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So then you might be like, let's talk about what you mean by a living person. You say you're pro-life. Why wouldn't you then value the living woman over, this sort of fetus that isn't anything yet? You might be like, well, it's not even murder because, you're not like taking away a consciousness or anything. It's just there is no like person there. And then you have to get into the whole stupid like soul debate. What's all this about God putting the soul in there? And then after that argument, you have to have the whole argument about like, well, what about babies that die? Do they just go to heaven? Like, that's just how it works. It's like, they never heard about Christ. So why do I have to be out here where I have to like hear about Christ in order to be saved in that mechanical way that, pedestrian Christians talk about it? Why do I have to do all that? And then the baby just like gets in for free. Like, so there's a whole chain of arguments you can have, and it's challenging because there are so many moving parts and elements. Wanted to add too that it's so weird that Christians talk about what goes to heaven as though it's the personality. It's like, well, if you think that, then in the case of the baby who has no personality content at all, what goes to heaven? They don't experience God then. And also, why do you think you and your personality is going to heaven? Your personality, like whatever you're endowed with in terms of your soul, would have nothing to do with the content of you. And then so it's like, look at Catholic Christianity, and they say like the body is supposed to go to heaven, and it's like, well, I don't know. That to me sounds like the body is what gives rise to the personality, and the whole package has to go. There's nothing to do with a soul here, a formless soul. I don't think it's a very useful way of thinking. I think it's kind of a shitty theological concept, the soul. Like, what are you supposed to do with that? What, like wherever you go after you die, you just, oh yeah, like I'm a formless void. I have no part of myself. But it's like, at the same time, almost every spiritual tradition involves the abnegation of the personality in order to find like the bare face of the mind or divinity or the Atman or whatever, you know? So it's like there's a real territory there to tease out some interesting issues. So that's like where you're getting into all those definitions that the person has about terms like murder and a life, and then a soul, and then the general theology surrounding the soul and whether that makes any sense. That's a whole chain that I just went through. Well, let's step over here and use the other method. The other method is where you get into something and you talk about related ideas that the person probably holds. So for some reason, these Christians, the religion of love and peace, they're obsessed with guns. So it's like you would talk about that and be like, how does that make any sense? You're pro-life, but you're also obsessed with guns. Also, what does Jesus have to do with guns? You know, and you might get into it that way. The problem overall, though, is you're never going to get somebody to change their mind if they cling to their views. So I change my mind all the time. I change my mind every 20 minutes about the scope of the entire world, like my entire worldview. But most people, I mean, they're really latched in there, and it's and a few levels down, I'm latched in there too, right? I have my obsessions, but it's like there's a buffer. But like some people are right there. They're like obsessed with how they think about like whatever they were fed from the things they consume in the media about politics. And the strange thing is, even though you can't change anybody, I've found it is so valuable to go through the world, and I almost never do this, which is why I find it so valuable when I finally stumble upon it and do it for once. It's so valuable when you just treat other people as smart and you give them the benefit of the doubt. And I can't imagine how much less of a dick I would be if I did that. It's just unreal how, I'd be a much better person. But it also makes you feel better. It makes, I think it helps create compassion. And for someone like me who really identifies with intelligence, I think it's very, very important to understand the shadow contents and look at the ways I'm stupid, because there are plenty of ways. And it is the exploration of those shadow contents that is so life-changing. So whatever you think you are, you're going to take the opposite and you're going to stuff it way down. And then you're going to see it in other people. You're going to project it on other people. And you're going to constantly be hating that. And you're going to zero right in on it, on everybody. But if you turn around and you just do it to yourself and you just look at, I really am kind of a dip, and look at all these ways that I'm a dip, it gets really interesting and it can be life-changing. And the thing I learned about projection is the issues you see in others, they're slightly different from the issues you search out within yourself. That's something I've discovered about projection. I think it's like maybe the one thing that could contribute to the literature on that is like, it's not a one-to-one thing. You don't see the exact thing in the other as the way it takes form in yourself. It's slightly different. Like my stupidity is the fact that I suck at practical matters and taking care of myself financially and just doing common sense things. The stupidity I see in others is that raw, like you're intellectually a moron and you can't change your views and you're politically idiotic and whatever. I've found projection to be one of the most powerful ideas a person can know for understanding things about themselves. And I hope to get better at figuring stuff out about myself in the future, because so far I haven't done jack shit, despite, being someone who spent a lot of time on introspective and like esoteric forms of thinking, sitting meditation and whatnot. But anyways, if you read Jung's lectures on Nietzsche, they're easy reading because he's talking. So it's really helpful. And you actually learn a lot of theory about just normal personality stuff. And one of the things he talks about is the fact that religious thinking or spirituality is actually very earthly. It's, I don't know how to say it, chthonic, it's, your spiritual life has everything to do with how you live on the earth. It's very embodied. There is such a thing as becoming too rational, super conscious, and being completely dissociated from your instincts. So it's like if you can bring yourself back down to just normal, like your animal life, and the fact that you have finances and you have to clean your house and there are idiots at your job and you have to learn how to deal with them, and all these normal mundane things, those are actually really fertile ground for spirituality. And one thing that Christianity has is this notion that divinity came to earth, earthliness, right? And there's, in Catholic Christianity, the thought that when paradise is like born, made, and like you go there, or you're like born there or reconstructed there or whatever, it's an actual body that you get. So there's a real sense in Christianity that embodiment matters, right? And as always, there's an enantiodrama where there's an opposition with this other idea, which is the complete repudiation of the body all the time as well. So it's super weird. It's almost like in the theory of the religion, it's all about effacement of the body and lifting up the spirit. But if you look at the nuts and bolts of it, it really is all about your body dying and resurrecting. The whole thing is about the body, right? But the more important message is that Christ is a symbol of coming down from spirituality that is abstract and hyper-conscious and becoming embodied. And you could say that it is the religion of living in the world. And so it's actually kind of a shame that theorists and theologians and whoever down the centuries made it all about where you're going to go after. And like, in a way, the disappearance of works is sort of a problem, because then you're just, I don't know, doesn't matter what you do, and that takes away from the embodiment of it, right? So I don't know. I guess there's just a sense that it's worth looking at a religion in terms of how it handles being embodied or not. And now I'm out of steam. So, okay, that's it for now.